Hello and welcome back to Perspectives. On today's show, we have the curious case of an Indian national arrested in California, labelled by the FBI as a Khalistani, yet India claims he's a member of the Bishnoi gang. Is there a bigger agenda at play, infecting Trump's new FBI? And talking of leaders, Keir Starmer is now increasingly being held to account by the British Sikh community. Lots of promises, but little delivery. And evidence is now emerging that India could well be involved. More on that in a moment, but in Kashmir, a deadly terrorist attack kills 26. But is all as it seems? And unsurprisingly, it's a Sikh community stepping in, offering sanctuary to the victims in local Gurdwaras. And Mark Carney visits Surrey. We have a report from location for you. All this and more on today's show, but joining me as always for Perspectives is our very own correspondent in Canada, James Cousineau. Good morning, James.
Good morning, Angus, and I got into the studio just under the wire in time to get the video uploaded from the Mark Carney event that I attended, and here we are. We will have more of that coming up. Don't forget that we love your comments. We love having them at the end of the show, so once again, make sure you keep them coming in. Thanks, and you're as much of the show as we are, so thank you very much for that. Back to you, Angus.
Indeed, and together James and I will bring you our perspectives on the daily news affecting the Sikh community across the world, and indeed, as always, we'll take a look at loads of great comments at the end of the show, so do stay tuned for that. Right, James, as always, loads to get through this morning. What are you going to start us off with today?
Well, sad state of affairs in Kashmir. It's breathtaking, Angus, that the reports coming out that the worst terrorist attack since 2008 and possibly even longer that killed 26 tourists and injured 17 others. Now, I personally describe it as a bloodbath or a river of blood that's flowing from Kashmir. This area actually has seen a reduction in attacks and violent episodes and outbursts over the last several years in this particular region, as I said. So this comes as even more of a shock that we see such a terrible event take place. Now, as this happened, there were, as I said, a lot of changes going on, a lot of development in terms of tourism and recovery that was just really a welcome calming for the region. But it also goes to show that the violence can break out and really flare up without warning, without indication. And that's something that we see in terms of travel advisories from various governments, including the Government of Canada, on the foreign travel page of the Canadian website or the Government of Canada's website, is that although it may seem calm, it can erupt in violence at any moment. So again, there are travel advisories about this. But it really, really is sad that when you look at the number of deaths and injured, most of those people that were of Indian descent and one from Nepal, it just is disgusting to see that the violence is breaking out once again. Now, local, state, and federal authorities are unleashing all power that they have in terms of chasing down and apprehending the suspects responsible for this tragic event. When we look at the significance of it, it is hoped that we won't see another pattern erupt and more violence that to follow this. It really, we hope that it's a one-off event that we won't see repeated in the near future. But of course, a lot of steps have to be taken now to ensure the security of those in the region. Once again, it is a tragic setback for the area and underscores the fragility of peace in the region and raises the urgent questions about security and the future of the vital tourism economy in that area. It should also be noted that various individuals and groups, including the Sikhs, were there to help to respond in relation to the attack, to help the victims and to offer refuge for those who were there. So again, it is something that we will follow. We'll keep updated. There's still a lot of information coming out about this attack, but we will keep you updated probably next week, as this is our last show of the week, but we'll bring you more next week as we get updated on it, Angus.
Yeah, here we are again. I mean, Kashmir, despite Modi's efforts pouring in 500,000 troops, it's still just a mess, isn't it? What is the solution? Well, I think we can all speculate what the answer to all this is, but yeah, it is a terrible tragedy, and of course the knock-on effect is enormous. It does. I mean, Modi's agenda has been not just to completely suppress and persecute the local Muslim population. He has his overall goal is to turn Kashmir into this wonderful tourist resort. It is, of course, one of the most beautiful places on earth. It is breathtakingly beautiful. And the news is that travel agents, I think there's one travel agent, the largest travel agent in Kashmir, said that they had to cancel up to 90% of their bookings over the next 3 months. So people are just running scared. They just don't want to go to Kashmir anymore. So of course, the sad side of this is, of course, it's the Kashmiris, it's the locals who are going to suffer once again, because they need this tourist money to keep alive, to keep surviving, and tourists are now turning away. And ironically, here's I suppose, again, one nasty side of it is, of course, as the tourists tried to flee Kashmir, it's the airlines have been hiking up their pricing just to take advantage of people desperate to flee the area. So again, profitable greed has stepped in, and even the government even had to step in and say, no, you've got to stop this, what they call surge pricing. But interestingly and unsurprisingly, as I said in the introduction, Gurdwaras, it's the local Sikh community once again who stepped up, as they always do in times of crisis, and they have opened up their Gurdwaras across Kashmir to welcome people who are seeking refuge after this terrible attack in Pahalgam. And there, of course, all the visitors are being offered langar, that's obviously the communal kitchen, and shelter and sanctuary. And tensions, of course, in the region still remain desperately high. And it's a terrible time. But of course, there have been some interesting parallels drawn to the Chitting Singh Pura massacre, which occurred some years ago. Which coincided with a visit of Bill Clinton, and this is it's maybe slightly conspiratorial, but is it a coincidence that JD Vance has just visited India? He's had this very high-profile visit to India, as Bill Clinton did back in the early 2000s, and that, of course, then was round about the time of the Chitting Singh Pura massacre, and where 36 Sikhs were murdered in cold blood by allegedly Islamic terrorists. And again, it flew in the face of logic, because Islam had absolutely no argument whatsoever against the Sikh community. Quite the opposite. In fact, they've both been mutually very supportive of each other. Yet that Chitting Singh Pura attack was blamed on Sikh militants, and the arguments have been going, and there has been an Indian officer who has actually whistleblown on this, saying actually it was the Indian army dressed up as Islamic militants deliberately attacking Sikhs to try and portray to the US visiting President Clinton that, we have this massive Islamic issue, this Islamic terrorism problem. In other words, laying a lot of the blame on the Islamic population deliberately to say, it's all Pakistan, they're the enemy, India's your friend, but Pakistan's the enemy. And here again we have JD Vance visiting India, and lo and behold, we have another mass shooting. I don't know. It is very conspiratorial. Who knows, James? But maybe there is another agenda at play. Certainly, based on India's track record over the past, we cannot put it past the Indian government, or certainly the Indian intelligence services, to undertake such an operation. They have done worse before, James.
Absolutely, and we've seen that before. We've, suspected certain activities at the hands of the India government and their intelligence agencies in the past. So I would really hate to go down that rabbit hole and think that they could have played a part in such a tragic massacre that's taken place here. But again, we've seen it before, and I'm just hopeful that maybe I'm too much of an optimist, Angus. But I'm hopeful that, that they were not playing a hand in it. But regardless as to whose responsibility it is, it's just a tragic event all the same. And hopefully it doesn't lead to more violence. As they say, violence can beget violence. So let's hope that that is not the case here. But moving along to a bit more of a peaceful event, loud but peaceful, it was Mark Carney here in our local community of Surrey, British Columbia tonight. He brought in a lot of excitement and a lot of enthusiasm, but he also got his digs in both at the Conservative Party and at Donald Trump. I guess, passed my desk earlier that there was more rhetoric out of the White House about Trump talking about crippling Canada financially so that we would be forced to become the 51st state. And to that, of course, Mark Carney did make a statement on that, or get his digs in, that we will never become a part of the U.S. We'll never be the 51st state. But let's take a look at some of the other things that Mark Carney had to say to the crowd tonight.
He's ignoring the investments that we need to build the strongest economy, an economy that works for everyone. He's surrendering, literally surrendering in the fight against climate change. He wants to cut what Canadians value: childcare, dental care, pharmacare, treatment for mental health and addictions, and the CBC. He has a bring it home tax cut that is never home. It won't arrive for 4 years after President Trump is due to leave office. It's not a solution. Our tax cut shows up July 1, by the way, $825 for hardworking families. Because if you're a pragmatist, you do something, you do it right away. Unlike Pierre Poilievre, I've managed budgets before. I've managed economies before. And I've managed crises before. And I know that in a crisis, you build forward, you don't cut back. A crisis is a time for bold action, not tired ideology. A crisis is a time to come together, not to sow division. A crisis is a time for experience, not experiments. Now, Pierre Poilievre and Mr. Trump's allies here in Canada, and he has some allies in Canada, they don't like our plan to stand up to President Trump. And, you know, to be charitable, maybe they believe what they're saying. Maybe they believe that the best way to defend ourselves is to leave every Canadian to fend for themselves. It's possible. They could believe it. Maybe they believe that we should just go along to get along. That the way to get through this crisis is to keep our heads down, to give the Americans what they want and hope for the best. No? Anyone? Any takers? No. That is not what will make Canada strong. I know, we can give ourselves far more than the Americans can ever take away. And we know, as America retreats from the world, Canada can lead it. And we should. I think the choice in this election could not be clearer. Now, I talk a lot about a strong economy, and before I wrap up, I want to say a few words about why I care and why we as Liberals, why we as Canadians care about building a strong economy. And it goes back to community. It's because we care about people. That value of community that we all share. We know we are all in this together. And I want to give an example from a few weeks ago. I met a teacher in Ontario who told me about a routine assignment that she'd given to her 9- and 10-year-old students. And the kids were asked to describe their dreams for Canada. She gave me the papers that they'd written. And some kids wrote about a country free of poverty. Okay. Others, be good. Others dreamt of clean air and clean water, or a place where everyone enjoyed equal rights, dignity, and respect. These kids, like kids here, kids there, well brought up, well taught. because what they're expressing is what we all want for ourselves, what we all want for each other. But you know what struck me? Is that many of these cards, the kids wrote about tariffs and threats to our sovereignty. And those.
So, as you can see, the crowd was quite enthusiastic about what he said. But of course, and then again, they are a liberal crowd. So it's not as though he showed up at a public engagement such as the Vaisakhi parade or something like that. This was tailored to the liberal crowd for the most part. There were a few hecklers that were in the crowd at certain points throughout the evening, and they were quickly escorted out of the building by the RCMP and the Surrey Police Service. And on that note, just a quick shout out. The Surrey Police Service officially took over as the official police service of Surrey, of course, from the RCMP in a ceremony the other day. And this was a big test for them to have the Prime Minister in town for a brand new police force running the municipal services there. And they did an amazing job. So shout out to the Surrey Police Service. Well done. And of course, on Monday's show, we'll take a look. There were some healthcare workers there as well who were protesting and trying to get awareness about the visa reduction program for healthcare support workers. So we'll also take a look at that. And Sukh Dhaliwal, I must say, class act. He went over, he spent some time discussing the issues with them. So it showed that, Sukh Dhaliwal really cares about the community as well. So hats off to him as well, Angus. But that's where we are at in this huge run up to the final count of the election happening on the 28th.
Indeed, and regular viewers will know very well my feelings about Mark Carney, and even just watching that speech just makes my skin crawl. Good heavens, that man has got a brass neck. I mean, just one quote that almost had me jumping out of my seat was, "I've managed economies before." No, you haven't, Mr. Carney. You were governor of the Bank of England, and when you were there, you made an absolute hash of it. So he's trying to sell himself as some great economist to Canadians. And it terrifies me, frankly. And I do know, and I'm resisting as much as I can, James, to have a go at Mark Carney. But, as I say,
but in his defense, Angus, he never said he managed them well.
Well, that is true. It's all about the nuance. You're absolutely right. And I think, the real message I took from that speech is he's really playing on the anti-Trump. I mean, it's easy for a nation, I've said this before, if an unpopular leader needs to become popular again, he needs to find a bogeyman to unite the electorate behind him or her to fight against the external threat. And that is what Trump is for Canada. Trump has presented himself as, well, we all know how he has. And Carney's really leveraging that. He's using Trump as the bogeyman, this terrible bogeyman, to then try and get more support in Canada for his party. And that is exactly why I think they are ahead in the polls, simply because of that one simple reason. What does alert me once again, and again brought up in that speech, is this, for example, the climate change agenda. To me, and from a personal perspective, I see this whole climate change agenda as one of the greatest scams perpetrated on humanity in recent centuries, literally. The whole net zero thing stinks. But of course, it is driven primarily by the World Economic Forum. Yes, it is one of their great foundations of their global agenda and the agenda of the globalists. And here we are, the great globalist, the great WEF advocate, Mark Carney, pushing this agenda again. Once again, who's the biggest threat to the World Economic Forum? It's Donald Trump. So once again, you see the lines being drawn here, the sides appearing, the polarization between Donald Trump standing up for what I believe is much more of the free world. And obviously, James, we fundamentally disagree on that. But ultimately, it's for me and those who are supporters of Trump, see Donald Trump standing up for those essentially who are diametrically opposed to the World Economic Forum, the globalists and their agenda, which has infiltrated certainly across the Western world. And actually, ironically, it's Putin who has also stood against that. So there's weird dynamics at play there, James. But as I say, my feelings for Mark Carney, I don't know. I think it's very clear, and it does concern me. Obviously, I think the Liberal Party, as a party, as I've said before, is the best option for the Sikh community. But Mark Carney, I think we need to be very, very careful of.
Absolutely. And one of the interesting things, Angus, is that although the Liberals did pull a huge lead in front of the Conservative Party after Trudeau left and Mark Carney stepped in, it's actually reduced that lead quite a bit, and it's very neck and neck. They're actually polling within the boundaries there of the plus minus. So it very well could be a Conservative outcome. We don't know. It's down to the wire. We have had a record number of people actually get out and participate in advanced polling, a record number this year. Over 7 million people got out to to cast their votes in advance. So it's going to be an interesting race, one that may be a lot tighter than people think, with the differential being within the margin of error, Angus.
We'll be on the edge of our seats, and of course, no doubt, we will be there, hopefully, all being well, to report on the outcome. Right, James, let's move on to my first story, and let's move to California. Here's a strange story. It came out just the other day that an Indian national has been arrested in California by the FBI, and he's been labelled as a Khalistani. This guy, Harpreet Singh, is better known apparently as Happy Pasaya, or Pasaya, whatever, and he was arrested on the 17th in Sacramento. It was based on a wanted notice posted by India for being what they claimed a Khalistani terrorist, and he's responsible allegedly for terror attacks across Punjab. Interesting. And that was according to an FBI release. However, Pasaya has previously been cited as a Lawrence Bishnoi gang associate with no connection to Khalistan, according to Indian police just months ago. So what on earth's going on here? Is he a Bishnoi gang member, or is he a Khalistani? As we well know, James, you cannot be both, because of course the Bishnoi gang is very well known for hating Khalistanis and actually causing all sorts of violence against Khalistanis, and indeed acting as proxy killers on behalf of the Modi government to attack Khalistanis. So in the FBI release, Pasaya is linked with the Baba Khalsa International group. But when mentioned on several occasions earlier in the year by Indian authorities and across Indian media, he was never associated with the Khalistan, but of course, quite opposite, on the opposite side, actually allied with the Lawrence Bishnoi gang. Again, very strange. Now, Baba Khalsa, for those who are not aware, Baba Khalsa International, BKI, was a very well-known Sikh freedom fighter group based back in the 80s and 90s during the terrible time of the genocides. And they were one of the groups fighting back. They were they took the vanguard of trying to fight back, basically in self-defense against the oppression and the persecution, the cold-blooded extrajudicial killings by the Punjabi police of young Sikh men. And so they were one of the groups fighting back. As a result, unquestionably, they were designated a terror outfit by some Western nations at the time, obviously under pressure from India. Although actually at the time, official acts of terror against civilians remain very much disputed. So all previous reports referencing Pasaya prior to the 17th of April when he was arrested just acknowledged he was a gang member involved in gun running, no political agenda, no association with Khalistan. So the whole thing is really strange. Now, the Lawrence Bishnoi gang he is associated with, according to the police's own commentary, are even notoriously anti-Khalistan. We do know that the Bishnoi gang have acted in the past as proxy criminals on behalf of the Modi government, or RAW certainly, to attack Khalistanis. And Happy Pasaya himself has never actually even been seen wearing a dastar, a turban. So again, one questions, well, why would he be a Khalistani when primarily Khalistani supporters, obviously exceptions like us, James, tend to be from the Sikh community and therefore wear turbans. Now, here's where it starts getting interesting. The FBI Sacramento branch that arrested him is headed by a guy called Siddhartha Patel, who would have had to approve the official statement claiming Pasaya is associated with the Khalistan movement. Now, Siddhartha's own boss, the head of the FBI, is also Kash Patel, no actual relation, but again, both from the same region. And even Kash Patel, head of the FBI, did not mention Khalistan in his own post about the arrest. However, he did make the claim that Pasaya was planning multiple attacks on police stations, both in India and the United States. Now, here's a question. Why would a Khalistan supporter plan attacks on police stations in the USA? Now, The Khalistan movement are basically supporters of the US administration of Donald Trump. They are supporters of US law enforcement because US law enforcement has gone to great pains and extents, whether it's the intelligence services, CIA, or whether it's the FBI, or whether it's just local law enforcement, or even local authorities, local governments, state governments. They have all aligned in support of the Khalistan movement to protect the Khalistanis who are activists, who are acting and campaigning across the US, and particularly in California. So why on earth would a Khalistani plan attacks against the US law enforcement? They wouldn't. It's just plain and simple. So it is very unlikely this guy's a Khalistani. So the question is raised, why then has he been labelled by the FBI as a Khalistani? Why has Siddhartha Patel, I think there's a clue there, labelled him as a Khalistani? And this is not the first time this has happened. Indian authorities have previously been exposed claiming Punjabi gangsters are Khalistanis. Again, this is where the agenda becomes a little bit more transparent. They are very keen to say any gangster, any criminal who has Punjabi roots must be a Khalistani. Again, it's always trying to smear the Khalistan movement with criminality, with terrorism. And fears of Indian nationalist interference in the United States political affairs will only be further fuelled with this confusing situation of people like Harpreet Singh, also known as Happy Pasaya. Now, whether the FBI's Patels will be keen to address this confusion remains to be seen, James.
So, yeah, this is very interesting because when we look at the Bishnoi gang in terms of their history, involvement, and potential activities on behalf of the RSS, on behalf of RAW, and on behalf of the BJP government, they've targeted Khalistani activists throughout Canada, the United States, the UK. And we know that the Bishnoi gang does have international ties and tentacles that reach out across borders everywhere. So it doesn't seem realistic to me that they are at all accurate when they're describing this individual as a Khalistani terrorist or Khalistani connections in any way, because the Bishnoi gang has been basically a weapon against the Khalistan movement at the behest of the India government. So again, I just don't find the credibility there, and I think that it is probably something that has been pulled by the India government to try and get, create that dissent and that anger towards the Sikh community against the Khalistan movement and to get that separation going again. So I just think that there's a lot more behind the scenes that we don't know about as to why they would label this individual in such a way, Angus.
Absolutely. And we do know for a fact that India and the government are doing their absolute level best to smear the Sikh community, and particularly the Khalistan movement, as much as they can, because they are terrified of its success, which has, of course, been really gaining momentum in over the last year or two. So anyway, let's move on, James, to my second story. And this was an article that came out the other day in Baz once again, and it follows a theme that we talked on a regular basis about. This is the failures of the British government to represent the Sikh community here in the UK. We have lots of issues that have been very strongly lobbied for on behalf of the community by various organisations, but particularly Sikh Federation UK have been one of the key organisations who've been pressuring Starmer's government. And in this article, it's Jas Singh, I think, wrote this article as one of the main contributors to Baz, and he said in this article that Keir Starmer, and it comes back to this one of the issues which has been pressured against Starmer is this Jallianwala Bagh massacre, dreadful massacre by the British Army in 1919. And the British government has been pressured for years to apologise formally on behalf of it. And Starmer actually promised that he would do so, and yet he still has not. And of course, this is one of the areas that certainly in recent times, particularly with the Vaisakhi address that Starmer did recently, it was expected that he would, on behalf of the British government, apologise for that massacre in 1919. But the annual Vaisakhi Downing Street celebration, which of course we covered at the time, it's become a staple of the Prime Minister's calendar. The event is, of course, very visual. It's very PR based. It's a very well managed event by the PR guys, the public relation guys, to try and give this impression that, of course, we care about the Sikh community. And it was a very professional video put together, as the Baz article says, many bright faces beaming while posing outside the iconic 10 Downing Street doors. But in reality, it did very little to advance various Sikh issues and concerns in the UK. And this is the case now more than ever with Starmer's Labour, which made the Downing Street Vaisakhi gathering distasteful to some. So even Jas goes as far as to say it was actually quite distasteful for many in the community. Even with strong support from Sikh groups, showcased with the election of 11 Sikh Labour MPs here in the UK after the last election, Starmer's government has made many promises to the community that have yet to be kept. Pre-election promises included, as again we talk about regularly, is this promise to launch an official inquiry into the attack on the Golden Temple, the Harmandir Sahib, the British involvement in that. Yes, Starmer promised that he would launch a judge-led inquiry, again, a promise made and a promise not delivered. And this demand came originally from over 400 Sikh organisations demanding this. And it wasn't just Starmer, it was his deputy, Angela Rayner, who promised this inquiry before the elections, as many politicians do, only to never mention it again, even when prompted. So they are deliberately ignoring the issue. Likewise, Jagtar Singh Johal's situation. Now, outside of Jaggi's own local MP, Douglas McAllister, who's been very vocal about it, the rest of the party have been conspicuously silent about it, never mentioned it. So again, where's the support from the government? And after the original charges were finally dropped on one of the cases against Jaggi, even more significantly, reports of renewed torture and solitary confinement. Many thought that would be a trigger for the government to actually really step in and talk about it loudly. They didn't. And I think the other point to bring out in this article, which is particularly fascinating, and this is a point that mirrors a point that I make on a regular basis, all of the countries impacted by the issue of Indian foreign interference have now finally addressed it in some form. Australia expels spies, Germany arrested Indian spies, US and Canada have assassins on trial, amongst very public actions against India, Trudeau, case in point. The world is waiting for action from the UK. The ball is in Starmer's court, as Jas says. Absolutely. Well, where's the UK's action? Well, once again, it's very noticeable in its action. Now, one other element that was mentioned in this article is the case of Dabinderjit Singh. Dabinderjit has been a regular guest on my podcast series, and he's very much a friend of the show. A very solid guy, actually, and he's closely associated with the Sikh Federation UK. And he has been very vocal and very active, certainly on all these issues, the main issues affecting the Sikh community here in the UK, but he's also a very staunch and active supporter of Khalistan. And as such, he's become a bit of a silent target of India. India does not like him, or the Indian government does not like Dabinderjit Singh, because he's been very effective in his campaigning. Now, Dabinderjit has had a very solid career working for the British government as a public servant of the British government. He's also been an advisor for the Sikh Federation, and he has 33 years of experience working for this country in the National Audit Office. So again, he's given a huge selfless service to the nation of the United Kingdom. As a result, he was expected to be nominated for a peerage. That is, here in the UK, we have the House of Lords, we have the House of Commons, our Parliament, but we also have the House of Lords, where people are elected to, or they're nominated to become Lords, and they then enter the House of Lords under what's called a peerage. A huge honour, usually afforded to people who, frankly, have earned it. Sadly, the system has now become there are too many who are just political appointees who haven't earned it, but that's a different story. Anyway, but Dabinderjit certainly has earned his peerage, and that would have made him a member of the House of Lords. Now, despite the fact that he was nominated and even approved by the Queen to become a Lord, it hasn't been delivered. The delivery has to come from the government. The government have to finally sign it off and then nominate him. Now, this has not happened. Why? Well, I asked Dabindajit what's going on, and he has spoken to me and given me the following statement. He has said that Starmer, in December last year, announced 30 new Labour peers as part of his rebalancing in the House of Lords. The House of Lords, of course, is made up of peers nominated by both Conservatives and by Labour, so that's what this balancing is about. The Sikh manifesto, published last year before the last election, encouraged the need for party leaders to appoint well-respected and competent Sikhs to be made peers to address this massive underrepresentation of the community. No Sikhs were appointed by Keir Starmer. Why not? Other minorities like Jews, Muslims and Hindus are far better represented, with numbers well into double figures. Labour, though, only has one Sikh peer, that's Kuldeep Sahota, who was appointed by Starmer in opposition in November 2022. His appointment was nothing more than a tick box exercise. He was a poor selection for Sikhs, and this has been borne out as his limited contributions have been unimpressive. His appointment was deemed safe, in quote marks, and was simply to save face following the controversial and unprecedented decision not to honour the peerage of Dabindajit in December 2020, although it had been approved by Her Majesty the Queen at the time. It subsequently emerged the last-minute intervention involving Keir Starmer as leader of the opposition and Boris Johnson as the Prime Minister of the time, minutes before that Cabinet Office announcement of his peerage, was as a direct result of Indian government pressure and interference that is now actually illegal under the new National Security Act. Many thought the whole matter had conveniently been brushed under the carpet. However, an Indian government intelligence officer based in Birmingham, in the consulate in Birmingham, yes, here we are again, the Indian consulates and diplomatic infrastructure being used as a cover for intelligence operations. This Indian intelligence officer, has been boasting how they successfully applied pressure on Keir Starmer and Johnson to block the announcement of Dabindajit's life peerage. They were worried as he is articulate and a strong advocate for the re-establishment of a Sikh state. A government minister who was made a life peer in December 2020 in a private conversation also admitted it was Modi who blocked Dabindajit's peerage. Now, there is a global controversy about the extent of this transnational oppression and political interference by India. And the governments are now asking questions in Canada and the US. So what's happening here in the UK? And certainly I think Dabindajit Singh's peerage being blocked by India, and why Keir Starmer is supporting this is a big question, and it is a matter that needs to be put right. So the question is, how did the Indian government get away with it? And how are they being able to get away with stopping the peerage process and bringing the whole process into disrepute? Why did Keir Starmer bow to Indian government pressure when it came to a Sikh representative when Labour had no Sikhs in the House of Lords? Lots of questions, James, but it stinks. It is very clear once again that the British government is beholden to India. Why has India got the British government in its claws? Why is the British government always bowing down to the pressure of India? It's actually not just an embarrassment, it's just an absolute shame when all the other countries like Canada, the US, Australia, New Zealand, all these other countries have publicly stood up and called out India, called out transnational oppression. What does Britain do? What does Starmer, who made all these promises to his electorate, the Sikh community who elected him into power, he's done absolutely nothing, James.
It's been an ongoing issue, whether it is the Starmer government or others in the last recent history. And that there has been a failure of representation. There's been a failure to follow through on promises made to the Sikh community. There has been a failure to present a fair and open front. And it would be one thing if that was just the case, but it goes even further because it's broken promises. There are commitments made that are not followed through on, and it leaves a bad taste in the mouth of those and in this particular case, the Sikh community, because they're promised over and over. And it takes us back to 1947 when the partition of India happened. And there were so many promises that were made, so many commitments made to the Sikh community. And again, they failed time and time again to come through and actually fulfill those promises made to the Sikh community. And this seems to be another failed opportunity for them to make it right and actually follow through on some promises for a change.
Indeed, and as I often say, is anybody surprised if they are politicians after all? They seem to be as bad as each other, whichever side of the coin they come from. But on that note, James, let's move on to our comments column, because we had lots of interesting comments, and this is an interesting insight from several members of our audience about actually this same subject. Knockdown kicked it off with, look, why are some fake Sikh Indian agencies needing an apology from the British government again and again? These are the very same people creating a wedge between Sikhs and other communities so they don't unite in favour of Khalistan. We don't need an apology. Sikhs just need support and recognition for Khalistan. It should be a clear agenda on every Sikh organisation, etc., etc. And Rajveer Dillon says, again, look, Kelsey, you're a very experienced Sikh. How many times will you make the British apologise for the mistake done 160 years ago? The Queen's already apologised. Now only fake Khalistanis who are agents of the Indian state are demanding this apology. What nonsense. And B33263 says, just wanted to let you know, Sikhs actually don't want any apologies from the British government. The Queen's already done it. It's pro-India people wanting apologies to make an issue between Sikhs and the UK. Sikhs want to focus on present issues. Now, this is interesting, James, because I didn't know this. I have been quite, I would say, vocally supportive of this demand for an apology. I think, certainly as a British citizen, I am embarrassed and ashamed, clearly, by what happened in 1919. I think it's dreadful. The Queen has apparently written and apologised, but I still personally believe that the government should also apologise. But ultimately, well, we have clearly members of our audience who feel otherwise, saying, look, it's a distraction. It's there to try and drive a wedge between the Sikh community and the British government. Right. Well, I would say there's already a wedge there because the government is not delivering on other key issues, but that's another point. But it's interesting, James, that clearly there are members of our audience who say, look, no, this is an irrelevance. Let's just focus on what really matters. Obviously, firstly, Khalistan. Secondly, other things like even the 1984 investigation that was promised and still hasn't happened. So, yeah, differing views here, James.
Absolutely, and I think that a big point of contention can be the lack of follow through when it comes to promises still being made to the community, just like I was saying just moments ago, and the lack of follow through there. So I think that actions speak even louder when it comes to the apology, and not necessarily words, but actions, and that's what I think that we need to see more of, and that's follow through in support of the community.
Indeed, and I would say that those who I know who are calling for the apology for Jallianwala Bagh are pro-Khalistanis, and not just pro-Khalistanis, they are absolutely passionately pro-Khalistan. They're not fake Khalistanis, I don't believe. Certainly my interaction with them has been quite the opposite. They are absolutely passionate and working hugely behind the scenes. I know an awful lot of stuff that is going on behind the scenes, and these guys are working behind the scenes to ensure that Khalistan is delivered. So it's an interesting I would say, clash of views on that one. So thank you to each one of you who've commented and let us know on that one. Thank you for that. Right, next set, and Devinder Singh says, well, yeah, again, it's the same theme. This government has broken many promises that they made when they were in opposition. For example, I mean, this is just one of many examples that they've betrayed the pensioners, winter fuel payments, waspy women, this is about pensions again, electric bills, council tax, these are very much UK issues here, James. But I think what is probably common here in the UK with our government, there's probably common with every government in Canada and elsewhere, is that, yeah, they make all these huge promises when they're in opposition, but as soon as they're elected into government, well, those promises are very quickly forgotten.
So, yeah, I think that one of the bigger problems, Angus, are the people that actually think the politicians are going to follow through on their promises. I think that that's the first thing. If you're thinking that a politician during election cycles is going to actually keep all of and fulfill all of their promises, then I think that you might be a little delusional yourself and need to really pull back and say, okay, do I believe that they're going to do it? Unfortunately, I mean, that is the reality that we have to approach politics with. It would be amazing if politicians kept their word and follow through. But again, I'm not holding my breath on it, that's for sure.
And as we say in English, James, pigs might fly. But anyway, let's move on. So, Govinda Sond makes a comment. Indian Hindu government from the last 76 years is due to British government supporting unconditionally all these years. And again, it follows this same theme. It's all the British fault. And I have to say, actually, it partly is. Definitely. I think the British handed over control of India to the Brahmins in 1947. And the Brahmins have just continued that colonial control over India ever since, James.
Absolutely. And let's face it, again, we have to, approach politics with a realistic approach, not with a fairy glass lens. So we need to make sure that we keep that grounded as well.
Now, Sukhchain Bhatt has come back as irregularly, saying, God bless to all. Thank you. God bless you too. But once again, we have this SBAI multi-pillar big tech. And again, I can't work out if this is an advert, James. We've mentioned it before. We did say, look, if you're watching, what is this? Are you advertising something? But it's interesting that there's been I've put two upticks on this to display it. So that clearly people, maybe there's something we don't know about this, James, but it still remains a mystery. Maybe Sukhchain can let us know, please, what is this about?
Exactly, Angus.
Mohan Anoa says, India is terrified of losing the Sikhs. Without them, it would starve, and countries like Bangladesh would conquer it. I don't know if Bangladesh is quite strong enough to conquer the rest of India. Maybe not. But certainly, I think one thing is true there is that India is terrified of losing its Sikh population because, apart from the fact that Khalistan, aka Punjab, is the breadbasket of India, I think it's the Sikh population that really have formed much of a backbone of India. Of course, that's no disrespect to many other communities in India who have contributed, but certainly the Sikh community have always been there at the forefront of pushing India forward, James. And I think genuinely that India would be much the poorer without the Sikh community.
Absolutely. And I also think that there's a lot of leadership and other ways in which the Sikh community could definitely have contributed over the past several decades to the success of the entire region. If they were to succeed from India, I think they have a lot to offer. And right now, as we've seen with the Kashmir region and the massacre that took place there is a lot of chatter going on about the battle and the differences between Pakistan and India, and parts of the BJP and other politicians are blaming Pakistan for the attack in Kashmir. So again, I think that if you were to see that separation of Khalistan, you'll also see separation, whether it be Jammu and Kashmir and other regions break off so that they're more autonomous, they have more sovereignty, and they can deal with these issues a lot more effectively, I believe, instead of having a central control from New Delhi.
Absolutely, and clearly Khalistan would form that buffer zone between Pakistan and India that certainly from a geopolitical perspective would be such a positive thing to happen. And of course, talking of which, Trent Franks, who we featured yesterday, his very powerful speech on behalf of the Khalistan movement and the Khalistan caucus, he gave that great speech, which has been obviously very well received by most in our audience. Hardal Singh says, well, thank you and congratulations. And 5AAB likewise said the community is very grateful for Congressman Trent Franks for his support. And likewise, you say, watching your programme really lifts our spirits. Well, we're delighted to provide that service. As you say, the Sikhs never forget friends and foes. Well, we certainly hope we are friends to the community, James.
Absolutely, Angus. And that is, again, it just shows that people are watching and paying attention, but that they are coming back to us with their opinions. But more important that we listen to the comments that come in. So thank you for that. And we're honored to have people sharing those opinions and to see the wider support for the Sikh community out there, including Trent Franks.
Indeed, and I would say even just from my own personal interaction with the Sikh community here in the UK, the welcome has always been sincere and warm, and it's really been a pleasure to work with the community. So, Mahal Saeeb says, "I have no words to thank you, but in future your names will be written with golden ink in Sikh history. We Sikhs never forget." Well, that is a wonderful epithet. Thank you. And Money Singh says, "God bless you two gentlemen." Well, it's not often I'm called a gentleman, but thank you, and it is very touching to get comments like these. I don't know if we'll be written in golden ink. Maybe that's an aspiration too far, but certainly as long as we're doing our little bit towards Khalistan, that's all that matters, James. That's the thanks enough when that country is established. That will be enough thanks, certainly from our part, I would say, James.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's just it, Angus. We are looking forward to sitting in a cafe, enjoying a nice cup of chai tea in Khalistan and celebrating with everyone else. And that's going to be such an honor to be there for it.
Absolutely, it will, and we look forward to the day that Khalistan is established. We will be broadcasting the first show on behalf of the Khalistan Broadcasting Corporation, the KBC, let's call it. And SSKK wraps up with a big thank you, and thank you to each of you for your comments. And wish Sikhs have their own homeland, Khalsaland, as you say. Sikhs care for all others. It's about time that Sikhs are cared for too by giving them Khalsaland. Of course, we do know that the Sikh community cares about humanity. It does so much savour, selfless service to take care of the vulnerable, those who are in need. But who actually cares about the Sikh community? It doesn't seem that there are enough people in this world who actually reciprocate that kindness back to the Sikh community. Well, all they want in return is a simple thing. It's the establishment of Khalistan, James. So on that wonderful note, there you have it. That was Perspectives for another day. Don't forget, please, to keep your comments coming in. Loads of great comments have been coming in, so thank you to each and every one of you who have contributed on there. Don't forget, you can message us directly at message@satellitetv.com on anything that you'd like to bring to our attention directly. But that is it for another week. Do keep an eye out for a Satellite TV special when we'll talk about Trent Franks' speech on behalf of the foundation, the Caucus Foundation, the Khalistan Caucus Foundation. That will be released tomorrow. But in the meantime, it is a goodbye from me. It is a goodbye from James.
Stay safe, everyone.
You have, of course, been watching Perspectives. We will see you next time.